These might just be the kind of collectibles you want to keep locked away in a case. Here's your look at the brand new Neca Toys, Puppet Master Ultimate 6-Shooter and Jester. Neca is proud to present the Ultimate 6-Shooter and Jester 2-pack from the cult movie series Puppet Master. Each figure stands approximately 4.25 inches tall, representing the classic look of each puppet, with accessories themed to the character's appearance in the franchise. 6-Shooter includes removable hat and bandana, interchangeable hands, and 6 revolvers. Jester includes removable fool's hat, scepter, tenderizer, scalpel, interchangeable expressions, and hands. Comes in a window box packaging replicating Andre Toulon's puppet case. So it seems now a box of little toys has become a gang of little terrors. Just before, of course, we get a closer look at the Puppet Master Ultimate 6-Shooter and Jester, I'd like to thank the folks over at Neca Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. The figure set is available right now online or in stores if you'd like to get this set and continue on the Puppet Master figures, having already gotten 2 sets so far. Jester is going to be the smallest of the two, taking the tape measure right to the top of his head. He's actually not quite 4 inches in height. He's actually only about 3.75 or about 3 3/4. That translates to a figure that's about 9.5 centimeters tall. 6-Shooter definitely has not only more arms, but a lot more height. He's actually 4.5 inches in height, or the figure's about 10.5 centimeters tall. Marking now the 3rd set of Puppet Master figures we've gotten from Neca. We did get already a set, and they're generally packed in 2s. So the first set, for example, came included with both Blade and Torch. Blade being one of my all-time favorite Puppet Master figures. And then we also got ourselves a set where it had Pinhead, not related to, of course, the Cenobites. He's always seems to be the smallest and hardest figure to stand. We also got as well with that Tunneler. Tunneler's a great looking figure as well. And because these are also supposed to be based on dolls, which will also explain why they're so small, to give you an idea as well of how that stacks up with a other killer doll. Here's what the figure looks like with the TV series Chucky. Let me tell you, it took a lot of time to get everything out of the package. Not as much for Jester, but a lot more for 6-Shooter. Essentially, every one of his accessories is times 6. So when we look at his accessories, for example, I'll show you one of them, and it's basically just rinse and repeat for those. But I think what we'll do first is we'll look at Jester. He's actually one of my favorite characters from Puppet Master as well. But he's not as high, say, as Blade. I really like the idea and the design, though, of Jester. So for his accessories, for example, he comes included with a tiny little scalpel. It's really small. The scalpel, and for that matter, really all the accessories that come included with these figures are so tiny, if you're not careful, you'll definitely lose them. There is a little lip right here that I don't think belongs anywhere. I could be completely wrong. I'm looking at, for example, Jester, and I don't see a section, for example, that this would plug in place. I'm thinking that little lip of plastic is just there specifically for the way it's designed. But the scalpel does fit into his hand. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time to say scalpel. It does fit into his hand, and it fits in fairly well. Probably one of the reasons maybe they added that little lip so that it sits actually on his pointer finger. Yes, his fool's hat falls off frequently, and even then, just getting it back onto his head seems to be a hard thing. The figure also comes included with his tenderizer. All of these, by the way, are things that we see in the movie. The tenderizer, nicely done here in silver. Some nice additional red that they've added there as well. I don't know for the size of this. You'd have to be pretty close quarters, I would feel, to Jester for this to inflict any damage on you. Again, it's pretty small, but again, it fits into his hand. The last thing he also comes included with is his scepter. It's my favorite of the accessories, as it does have, you can see there's a little face there on the front and a little face on the back, sort of like the plays. There's a smile on the one side and the frowning face on the other. These, again, aren't sharp, but you would imagine in the film, these would, again, inflict some pretty damaging damage. These, again, will fit into his hand as well. Speaking of hands, though, Jester also comes included with a couple of gripping hands. Again, these are so tiny. I would not want to jinx myself, but I know for something so small like this, I know it would just end up onto the floor somewhere. Luckily, though, with the hands that he has, at least this hand here, I don't really even have to change anything out. He does, though, have a relaxed hand on the other side, so if I do decide, for example, I want to have the figure displayed holding more than one accessory, I might just end up popping the hand off the forearm and replacing with this gripping hand instead. Look how tiny that is. So very small. The other thing that Jester also has is one of his notable characteristics. In the movie, though, if you are familiar with the Puppet Master series, maybe if you're not, it's probably a better explanation I could give you. With Jester, the neat thing about him is that he rotates his face. So if you can see, for example, I'm just going to remove his fool's hat for a second. If you look at his face, see how it looks like it's in 3 parts. Now, Neca, for the size of the figure, it would just be impossible for them to be able to replicate that same idea. But the idea, obviously, is that it would rotate. So the top, the middle, and then the bottom would rotate separately, and then he'd form different faces from that. I mean, if you look at the back of it, it's somewhat unrealistic that he'd be able to form different faces, but the idea is it would rotate and he would just alternate those 3 sides, those 3 parts, and change his face that way. What they've done instead is they've essentially given us 3 different heads to work with. I started things first with the frowning face, but he does also come included with a surprised face, and if I can hold everything while I'm doing this, he also comes included with a smiling face. Now, I prefer myself the smiling face. You may choose for yourself. I kind of started things off with more the frowning face. I'm not really even sure why. But the faces, all 3 of them, are nicely painted. I do like the way they've airbrushed the areas around the eyes, for example. The eyes really do pop on this figure. And again, 3 completely different expressions. It's not they're simply just packing in unnecessary head sculpts that have very similar faces. All the faces from Jester are all very unique from one another. To changing out the face is just a case... Didn't mean to rhyme there. Just going to pop the head off the provided post, find the head that we want to then use, and that just plugs in place. You just want to make sure it's securely snapped in place. Then you can take yourself the fool's hat, which is just right over here. And the fool's hat has 3 sides to it, but you kind of want to go with the side that's the most open, and that basically just fits over top. I don't know if it would survive. It does survive the blizzard test. So you can tip it upside down. Not that you really want to be doing that with your figures, but you can tip it upside down. It doesn't look like the fool's hat's going to be going anywhere. The Jester's hat. Colors on this guy is fantastic. Not only did they do a really good job on the face, but all the things below the face work really well. Like, for example, he's got the Harley Quinn style of outfit where it's got triangular shapes here. You can see there's some purple, some black. Those are all panel lined nicely there in gold. He's also got, of course, a couple of bells there on the bottoms of his hat. Again, you want to make sure the hat's securely on there. It's a nice color of additional red there. And he's got, again, that little playwright face down below around the area of his belt. Some nice little decorative details of the gold down below. And again, some really bright looking boots there. Also nicely done in gold. None of these figures, by the way, and that's earlier figures also, don't have pegals on the bottoms of their feet. If you look at them, though, there almost seems to be indentations where the heels would be, well, where the heels are right now, where it would almost give you the suggested idea that pegals were originally on these figures and they decided not to put them. See how there's a little bit of indentation? I might just be looking into this and seeing more than what's actually there, because you can kind of also even make the argument there's a little bit of indentation there on the top. But it does almost in a way look like there's pegals that were originally belonging on these figures and they just never ended up getting them. Either way, though, the figure does have, for articulation, a ball joint in the head, so it does rotate the head all the way around. Just make sure, of course, you don't lose the hat in the process. The shoulders are on hinge joints, so you can hinge them out almost at 90 degrees. The arms do allow the rotation all the way around. As you're doing this, though, with Jester, you might find yourself frequently knocking off the fool's hat. You won't be a fool as long as you pick up the hat and put it back on the figure where it belongs. The figure does have, surprisingly, a double hinge, and it's not a hinge where it's so close quarters. There's a hinge right here, and there's a hinge right here. Between those two, Jester has a surprising level of articulation to him. You can also rotate the hands back and forth. The upper torso is on a ball joint. And even on a ball joint, what the torso actually is, I almost even lost the hat. It's actually just below the belt. That's where the point is actually. So it rotates all the way around. Legs split out. They're on ball joints. You can take the legs and move forward, move them back. It's a little bit of a mild swivel, just a very little bit at the top of the thigh. Single hinge on the knee, allows the lower leg to rotate. You also have a rotation there in the boots, and you can also move the feet back and forth. There seems to be maybe just a little bit of ankle pivot, but enough that the figure, at least surprisingly enough, stands pretty good. I say that now. Will he actually be able to stand? I do kind of think in a way, though, while all of these Puppet Master figures have been really good, just with the size of them, they're way really too small. I feel like they're, especially when it comes to like Pinhead. Pinhead was the one that really had the hardest time to stand, and even in that review, I think I had a real nightmare to get that figure to stand. I really feel like I should go back and re-review these figures. Would you guys like to see that? Let me know down below in the comments section. In the meantime, though, let's look at the multitude of things that come included with Ultimate 6-Shooter. Because again, like he's got 6 arms, he essentially has 1 accessory times 6. So the hands, for example, were one things, in fact, I actually had to swap out. Let me just make sure that I've got the facing thumbs go in. All of these hands that you're seeing right now were all hands I had to remove from each of the individual forearms. And I thought to myself, to get that going at the beginning of the review with him holding all his pistols, there was no way I was going to default them back just to simply show you guys that he does have trigger firing finger hands. No, I'm just going to leave them off. So he does have relaxed hands. I've already taken the liberty of removing that, times 6. Then, of course, that's all on both sides, too. So I guess he has one set of 3 on this side, and then he's, of course, the alternate, because it's mirror flip, would have it on the other side as well. The figure also then has gripping hands, which, again, I'm a little confused as to why they would have given him gripping hands. I mean, I guess they would be there as well to hold the revolvers, but considering he already has these hands designated for holding the triggers, I don't know why they would have then chose to give him extra hands like this. Again, you just pop, 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 remove them all off, and then you just swap them off accordingly. The last thing that the figure comes included with is a revolver. And to show you one, I would be essentially showing you all of them, just to show you that they are exactly the same to one another. They haven't thrown in slightly distorted or slightly different revolvers. Can you see them? There you go. There you go. You get 6 of these. 6 shooter, after all. You can't be 6 shooter and only have like 4 guns. Then you would only be 4 shooter. Anyways, the figure does have, again, like the gripping hands or the trigger firing hands. I've already taken these all off. I've taken off all the relaxed hands and replaced them all with these. That took a lot of time. He does also have not only the storage space, obviously with his hands to store the revolver, so if you want to have the figure displayed with him like that, likely going to be the way I'm going to be doing it myself. But revolver 6-shooter does have spaces for his revolvers, as he does have 4 on the front and he has 2 holsters on the back. Any one of these, all 6 of these, will have the available means to store the revolvers. Again, if you would only choose to have the figure with maybe, say, 1 revolver in his hand, or maybe 2 on the top, for example, and leave the other 2 for doing other things, mischief-wise, then you could just take the other revolvers that you're not currently using, holster them, again, times 6. Getting a closer look, though, at the figure, one of the things, unfortunately, though, is his hat fell off. It doesn't happen too often, but then when it does give you, unfortunately, one painful reminder. Let me just move everything out of the way before we talk about painful reminders. Head sculpt's looking really good on this guy. Unfortunately, though, whenever you have the hat falling off, I noticed this right away. I've got a little stain right there. You see that? Looks like he's got a bruise on the top of his head. Likely what ended up happening was the figure came out of the packaging with the hat already on him, and probably with the heat, I would imagine this guy being shipped, a little bit of the stain of the black from inside his rim ending up on top of his forehead. You can see it's left a stain behind. I'm never really going to have the figure displayed really honestly without his cowboy hat, but it's just a shame that unfortunately some of the paint from the hat had to find its way onto his head. And again, with the hat not really staying on permanently, it's always going to be something similar to the fool's hat. You're not going to be a fool, but you're going to find yourself probably frequently retrieving the hat because it's going to fall off frequently for 6-shooter. The other thing that he does also have is his bandana. Now, again, you could choose to have the bandana in front of his face like this, but really, though, you can also drop the bandana down, and he's got a sinister smile underneath. Now, he hasn't been eating corn. Those seem to be gold teeth that he has on the side, but I just love the idea that they actually did sculpt the face underneath. If you choose you would like to have the bandana down, at least there's something rather interesting to look at for the figure. Or, again, if you want to have that up, you don't really have to move the back of the bandana up at all. It's basically just you're going to shimmy this up the front of his face. Luckily, though, he doesn't have any of the stain of the front of his face like he does have on for the hat. But basically, you're just going to bring it up until finally it hits the top of his nose. I guess the front of his nose. And then that's going to stay in place. And it's not really going to be going anywhere. Nice paint work done here on the vest. It's generally an all white body, but the vest does bring a little bit of necessary brown. The holsters, by the way, are all very thin in plastic. So while we are looking at the articulation and even moving forward, getting this guy on the shelf, just be careful with these because the plastic being so thin like this, these could be potentially broken. Again, all the arms are going to have the same shared level of articulation. One thing I was really kind of impressed to see is that even the opening of his shirt, where like basically his sleeves would be buttoned up, they actually painted underneath it black to replicate the idea that he would have gloves and he'd be wearing the gloves over top. I guess would he button the sleeves over top of the gloves? Or I guess he would just kind of tuck the gloves inside the sleeves. I don't really know. Nice work done on the denim jeans there as well. You can see he's got still several bit of ammunition still to work with. And that basically is nicely painted there with the gold all the way around the area of his belt. Cowboy boots are nicely done there as well with some spurs there on the back. It's a nice looking figure. Not that any one of these have been better sets than before, but being a big fan of Jester and being a big fan of 6-shooter, I really think that they went all out when it came to this figure release. Now, for the figure's articulation, essentially, again, we're going to get it kind of the same thing as what we got with Jester, but then we're going to rinse and repeat the same level of articulation with each of the individual arms. So, like, for example, 6-shooter's head is going to be, once again, on that same ball joint. It's going to move back and forth, up, down. You can also rock it back and forth there also as well. You may want to just hold onto the hat so it doesn't fall off and onto the floor. And then each of the shoulders, each of these, follow them along with me, are on hinge joints. So they move up and they move down, and you can kind of move them back and forth. They seem like they're a little bit more limited. You can also hinge them this way as well. And then each of the individual elbows, whereas, say, Jester would have had a double hinge, because, of course, there's so much more plastic going into six-shooter, he kind of loses a little bit when it comes to the articulation. So he only has really single hinge joints of posability, and each one of those possess a hinge joint where you can actually bend the elbow. So you can bring the forearms in about that far. You can also as well rotate the hands all the way around. And then when you get to his waist, or where you would consider his waist to be, up here though, I guess where his belly button would be, because he's got a really long torso. He's kind of built like a caterpillar. Upper torso is going to be once again on a ball joint. The lower torso seems to be on maybe a straight swivel. You can move that back and forth this way. Maybe there is a little bit of a ball joint happening. Yeah, there's a ball joint there as well. Legs once again are on ball joints, so you can split those out. You can bring them forward, bring them back. A little bit of a mild swivel there on the top of the thigh. Single hinge, once again, only for the knee. Rotates back and forth. And then for his feet, the only thing I've noticed, though, with six-shooter just happened right now. As you're kind of moving him around too much, you notice that his leg from time to time does pop off. It is, though, on ball joints. It's pretty easy, in fact, pop it back onto the ball joints. But it does happen a little bit. Ankle pivot does move back and forth. Ankle rocker there also as well. Nice looking figure. Nice looking figure. I wasn't really super thrilled with the idea of having to change out every one of his hands just to accommodate all the 6 of his revolvers, but it was well worth it. It paid off because the figure's going to be looking fantastic on my shelf with each of the revolvers nestled nicely inside of his hands. Then, of course, we can bring back in the other Puppet Master figures we've gotten. So, again, there we've got Blade and we've got Torch. Blade and Torch was a nice looking set as well. And then, of course, we got Pinhead on the other side. Followed with that, we also got Tunneler. I think the only one that we're missing right now, I'm trying to think of the original core characters. Is it Leech Woman? Leech Woman might be the only one that we've got. I'm sure there's one other one. There's probably one that isn't coming to my mind right now that somebody was probably going to be letting me down below in the comments section know. But we've gotten ourselves quite a long list, quite a nice list of Puppet Master figures so far from the folks over at Neca Toys. They're obviously small. You know, again, when bringing back in a Chuck, you can kind of see scale-wise how big those figures are going to be. They're supposed to be dolls. They're not going to be tall figures like Michael Myers. And they're nicely detailed for the size that they are. Considering really, again, even though these figures are smaller in size, they're not a 7-inch scale figure, they're at least fully articulated. So, I mean, I don't feel at all like NECA's cheapening the figure when it comes to the posability. They're still as posable as a larger 7-inch figure would be. They have tons of accessories. I mean, Jester has, 3 different head sculpts? I mean, and then Six-Shooter's got all those different guns, all those different hands. I feel like he might not have needed the gripping hands, though, because having relaxed hands and then also having the trigger firing hands, I think would be more than enough. But NECA decided instead just to pack him just tons of extra accessories, ton of extra hands. I guess that really isn't a bad thing at all. One thing I have noticed when it comes to the Puppet Master sets from NECA is that they're obviously sold in sets. They're sold in packs of 2. But each one of the sets, there's always one that I like more than the other. Blade and Torch, gotta give it to Blade. Tunneler and Pinhead. Tunneler was my favorite. And even though Six-Shooter has the more elaborate construction for his body, I gotta give it to Jester. Jester's still my favorite. A lot of it obviously has to do with the way just liking the character in the film franchise. He has one of the more favorite gimmicks in the sense that his face rotates to give different expressions, similar to a very evil Rubik's Cube. Even though really Six-Shooter takes up the majority of the space with all of his accessories, because everything that he has is basically times 6. Well, except for his hands. Obviously, he has 3 pairs of interchangeable hands on either side, but he has a whole lot of hands that have to then change out. At the end of it, I'm probably just going to have the figure displayed just holding his revolvers. But if you get tired with the idea of revolvers, you can always store them away with his 6 holsters that he has as well. I'm disappointed a little bit the fact that Six-Shooter does have a stain on his forehead, but it's never going to be something I'm going to see anyways. Even though he does have a removable hat, I'm never going to be one to ever remove it. What do you guys think of these? Let me know down below in the comments section. And then of the Puppet Master sets that we've gotten, each of the 2-packs, which one has been your favorite? Let me know down below in the comments section. As it goes certainly for availability, Six-Shooter and Jester is available right now in stores or online. Although I have noticed some of the online sites have sold out of this set. So if you are still interested to get it, you might want to try to track one down fast. If you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and want to stick around for more, we are going to be doing some more NECA reviews, so if that's the kind of thing you guys would like to see. And in the meantime, if you want to see more, popping up the very end of this video will be playlist of everything I've covered for NECA in the past, the present, and in the future. Well, even though the future hasn't happened yet. But it's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way, guys. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.